Well, that is it. The pick is in. The Buffalo Bills in 2025, round one of the NFL draft, have selected Max Hairston, cornerback out of Kentucky, right? Is that where he's from? I just
That's
Yes,
right.
sir.
yeah, Kentucky. For some reason, my brain just blanked there for a second.
Kentucky
Uh,
windage.
yes. So that is a we were bouncing around a couple different guys. Obviously, the big one techs were gone. How are we feeling, Jerry? First thought on this guy versus Amos versus Johnson, and what was left?
Well, I think what they did was they got the speed level up considerably in the secondary is what they did. And to me, this pick of Maxwell Hairston is a sign that the Bills are truly going to make a commitment to run more man coverage. I think that Maxwell can play zone very well because he has the speed to play off coverage, see through things, and then when he reads it, close that gap. Almost plays a little bit more of a cushion in zone than you would think because of that recovery speed. What is he? The fastest guy at the combine, definitely the fastest corner at the combine this season. So you're going to see that speed to carry guys like Worthy and Hill and those types of guys. To me, anyway, that's what it looks like. Now he does have a knock as far as people said he's not a great tackler. Well, he did have a shoulder injury last season, which kind of prohibited some of that. If you listen to a lot of the pundits and the analysts, they bring that up. So I think he's more than an able tackler, but he's not being brought in to be a contained cornerback. He's being brought in to carry speed receivers all the way downfield and play more man than we've seen in the past. So I think that's why he gets the nod over Amos. If Amos had a knock, he did lose guys at the top end of routes because he's not quite that burner that Maxwell is. So Maxwell gets the nod because of that overall speed and athleticism. So he's a great athlete. Great athlete.
John, what are your first thoughts?
Yeah, first thing I would say is it's nice to have choices for cornerback, right? So Johnson was still available, Trey Amos was still available, Siobhan Ravel was still available from East Carolina. So I think it was really good that the position of need, defensive tackle was more or less taken away from us. And then we were able to look at these four guys and then boil it down to what types of interactions do we have with them? What skill sets do we really need? And if you, like Jerry said, if you want to lock down one side of the field and put somebody like Hairston who can be in a position to recover, and I think that's the big thing. I remember having a conversation with Kurt Schultz when Thomas Smith was a rookie, and I was like, man, he damn near got beat. And Kurt was like, did you see him recover, elevate, and tap that ball away? And since that time, I look at the position a lot differently because the way these guys move around, think of Lad McConkey, the way Shakir changes direction on a dime, darts this way, darts that way, the things that we saw Stephon Diggs do. It's almost impossible to play corner in this league with the way the offenses are constructed. But if you have a guy who's athletic enough, light enough, and quick enough to break on the ball and recover, I think that's a terrific attribute to add to the defense. He's got the speed, he's got the recovery, and from everything I've seen, he plays with a really strong air of confidence, and you really need to have that at that position.
He competes. His level of competition, he competes at a high level. He's always getting after it. His nickname is Mad Max for a reason. And again, I think you're going to see another personality come into Western New York like we did last year with Keon Coleman. Hairston's a pretty I want to say, he gets after it as far as press conferences and things like that.
Gotcha. Breaking news here on the Overreaction, the Buffalo Sports Network, as the Buffalo Bills again have made their first round selection, which there was a lot of contemplation. Were they going to move up? Were they going to move out as far as that goes? And what's funny, even as they take Max Hairston from Kentucky, a cornerback, with their first pick, we didn't think a lot of these corners were even going to be there. This draft fell incredibly, I don't want to say strange, but just I was surprised that a running back went so high. I was surprised, and I don't remember which tight end it was, but there was one tight end. Which tight end went first? Do you guys remember?
Yeah,
top of your head.
the guy from Michigan, he went before
Yeah.
Warren.
Yeah, Colston Loveland, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, his comp is Tyler Eifert," and I'm like, "Wait a second, you're taking a guy at 10 that comps to Tyler Eifert, and then the second one that went from Penn State, Tyler Warren, they're like, oh, this is Gronk light, and like Travis Kelce, and I'm like, I think you took the wrong guy at 10, but
Well, I think the reason that happened was the Loveland kid's a little bit more of a fluid.
right,
He's a more of a fluid route runner. He's almost more of the he's a tight end and a half, basically, or a wide receiver
right,
and a half. He's got more wide out in him than he does tight end. I think Warren is a superior athlete and makes a lot of explosive plays, but maybe if there's a difference, not quite the route runner that Loveland was.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
Loveland beats the strong safety more often than Tyler Warren does. Now, Tyler Warren gives you more options as far as personnel, lining them up all over the place, running different run concepts, pass concepts. But Loveland, as a true route runner, as an athlete, he looks a lot smoother. And again, Joe, I mean, you say, well, you might have taken the wrong guy. It's really about what fits into your offensive philosophy.
Fair.
Yep.
Yeah, when you're looking at the way the draft fell, obviously Kenneth Grant goes to Michigan, which is unfortunate, obviously for two reasons. Number one, that he went early,
went to
as early as he
Miami.
did, yeah,
Went to
and
Miami, right?
then he went to Miami. When you look at the way the draft board fell, as we were kind of walking into or leaning into or kind of gearing up for the draft, it felt like the DTs were going to fall to us, and which was good, and we were going to be kind of out on the elite corners. Meanwhile, there's, as we already talked about, 3 of them there. Real quick, John, the way the board fell, like, any thoughts on that? I mean, were you biting your fingernails off?
Yeah, I'd like to say hats off to Jerry Ostrowski and John Fina, 2 guys that I know pretty well. When we talk about the run game and how important it is in the NFL and how the pendulum tends to swing back and forth, and eventually everything, regression to the mean or settles in the middle. The league is now, I think, because of the style of offense, running backs are seeing a resurgence, and 2 running backs in the first round is a really, I guess, interesting hallmark for some development of the league. But pair that up with, wow, guards off the board in the first round,
2 of them.
almost matching the tackles, which we never see. And you could argue that the tackle pool wasn't fantastic, but typically what you would see then is people loaning up more at, quasi skill positions or maybe linebacker positions. So that to me was a pretty interesting wrinkle in the draft, the running backs and the guards going.
By the way, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Josh Simmons, offensive tackle from Ohio State, as the last pick in the first round. The Eagles traded up to get Jihad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama. So
Eagles traded up one spot?
Yeah, one spot in front of the Chiefs.
Why do teams do that?
Well, obviously they must have thought there was a possibility that Kansas City wanted him, so they traded up for him. But the Simmons pick is pretty much in line with what everybody expected. The weakness of the Chiefs has been the offensive line over the last year and a half, and they wanted to get better there. But, when you do look in the first round, I think that it was funny. I think with Barron was at 20, and I think the wheels started turning a little bit in Orchard Park. When you have that premier guy, is he going to be the guy that slides? Read a lot this week about Derek Harmon being a prototypical 3-4 defensive tackle, and that the Steelers are going to be all over him if he was available, and that happened. We heard about Harbaugh wanting a running back. He gets his running back. So when you start looking at the Packers at 23, then you got the Vikings at 24. If Barron gets past the Broncos and he gets into that range, I think that's the area where we might have seen that trade up from Brandon Beane to get that guy, because this is a guy that was rated in the top 10 by most draftniks and guys that evaluated talent. When he gets off the board, then all of a sudden it was probably stick and pick. One thing we've learned in the past is the guy that everybody thinks that Beane's going to take is not the guy he takes. Amos has been mocked and talked about for weeks. He was a top 30 visit in Orchard Park, as was Hairston. But when you saw that, we should have known. And I think that when we do this again in 364 days, I will probably more than likely refrain from thinking that's who it's going to be, because this is 2 years in a row now. The guy that everybody thinks he's taking they don't take. But no, I'm very happy with the Hairston pick. I don't think he could have waited. I don't think he could have traded back into the second round. Now, I will say this. If it was the Giants doing it and the Giants didn't trade up into 25, the Giants had the second pick in the second round. Then maybe you do it because you probably get him or Amos. But obviously, being valued Hairston that much more that he stayed at 30 and made sure he got him.
So, Jerry, as we're talking about just the breaking news that the Buffalo Bills have drafted Max Hairston out of Kentucky with their first-round draft pick, you've done a ton of research, you've done a ton of conversation or conversing or just a lot of daily update shows just leading up to today. Why do you think Brandon Beane specifically took Hairston over Johnson and over Amos? Because it felt like he had a pretty good pick, like a pretty good option. Last year, it came down to, I don't want to say nothing, but Brian Thomas Jr. was gone. Like all the guys were gone. And it was like, well, you know, there's some guys there. We need a wide receiver. We're not ready to take one now. This year, it was like, oh, we get one of these three guys. Why Hairston?
Well, I think the fact, and I feel bad for Johnston, because Johnson is a hell of a football player, but the word on the street is he's got a horrible knee issue as far as a pre-arthritic knee, and failed a lot of medicals, and that's why you saw that guy who was a top 13, top 12 pick. He's now in the second day, right? So you can take a risk on a guy with a knee in the second day, maybe not in the first day. I feel really bad for him. I think again the reason it was Hairston over Amos was strictly the speed. And you look at so think about it. Christian Benford is a great cornerback in our system. He's not a burner.
No.
Now the other side, you've got two past Bills veterans. You got Trey White and you got Dane Jackson, who are older. They're not burners anymore. They're not, you know, they know the system. They can play their techniques and get where they need to be through experience, but they don't have that raw athleticism and speed that a guy like Hairston has. I truly believe this is an indicator of a possible shift in philosophy in that secondary to where they've played the Chiefs enough now in the playoffs and lost, and also lost to the Bengals, that they understand they're going to have to carry some guys downfield at that quarterback spot and play some man.
Let's dig into that philosophy a little bit, Jerry, because honestly, I think when I see that pick, it says to me, you can bring a little bit more type of exotic pressure. If you might not be able to lock onto a guy, but if you have somebody who can recover very well, and you can get a quarterback throwing maybe off his back foot or maybe on the move a little bit, that extra yard or yard and a half of variance on the ball gives a guy like Hairston a chance to recover. So more exotic pressure, is that what you're thinking? Because that's the first thing that pops into my head.
When I think of exotic pressure, I think of Hairston blitzing from the corner spot. I mean, he is a very good blitzer with the speed that he has. And Bobby Babbage Jr. will bring the corners quite a bit in this defense. I think the biggest thing, guys, and it goes back again, why him over Amos? And if you look at the one knock that Amos had, and we talked about it at the beginning of the show, it's he loses guys at the top of routes because of the lack of elite speed. You don't have that with Hairston. So, and it is true, John, if you're going to bring exotic pressures, you understand that you've got to play man when you bring pressures, because you don't have zone guys because they're blitzing, right? They're running dogs. So you're going to have to play a little bit more man. But the thing about Hairston is he does play zone equally well, where Amos was he was a long, big guy, bigger frame than Hairston, more of a physical look outside, where Hairston's kind of lanky and, you know, has that Merton Hanks look to him more than, you know, that real thick corner. But you got to look at the fact that he does play zone well too, because of his athletic ability. He can play off coverage, read it, and get downhill really, really quick. 6 interceptions at the University of Kentucky is nothing to stick at,
for sure.
And, you know, you're playing in the SEC. So I think a really good, solid pick. And you also have to go to the new philosophies you're going to have on defense, not just me speculating, but they got a new cornerbacks coach from the New England Patriots, and he's thought of as a man specialist. He's a guy that teaches a lot of man and teaches man well. So he probably had a lot to say about this pick also. So, you know, here's the deal. And there's a lot of people that are going to clamor, why didn't you take Johnson? Why didn't you take Revel? We're in a situation, we can't wait on guys.
Right.
We can't wait for Johnson to his knee to get better. We can't wait for Revel to recuperate from an ACL tear.
Right.
You gotta this guy right here, he's coming into play. That's the travesty of this. If he doesn't come in and start, and you pick the guy in the first round that doesn't start, that's when you can start maybe, clamoring a little bit about the pick. But right now, this pick is very good.
Yeah,
awesome.
100% agree. I have a question, Joe, if you don't mind, for both of you. Really, looking down through the first round and then kind of gazing a little bit at who's available now, second round, pick 1 through 30 or so. To me, I don't see anybody that, holy cow, I can't believe that guy fell out of the first round. There was nothing surprising to me. Jerry?
Shadir Sanders for me. I'm surprised that Sanders fell. There was a lot of teams that needed a quarterback.
Crazy enough, that was the one guy I was not surprised at. I mean, the film doesn't lie. And no matter how good that your father is at marketing, and we understand that Dion was probably the greatest athletic marketer in the history of pro sports.
Agreed.
It doesn't matter. At some point, he's not in the room, and these guys that evaluate talent are in the room in front of screens, and they're watching things. And
with no volume, with
right.
no commentary.
And here's the thing.
Dark.
It's not going to shock me if Shadir Sanders has a good career. But
Nope.
He's got to be in the right system. He's a ball distributor. He's not Josh Allen. He's not going to throw it in tight windows. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not going to run away from everybody. He is a system quarterback that gets the ball out. He probably does hold on to it a little too long, but that'll get fixed real quick after the first defensive end smacks him upside his head. But I just think that he's going to be fine. But really, him falling into the second round, let's face facts, folks, it's probably where he should be.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Jerry, thank you for knocking that one out of the park. I threw that softball. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Joe, can I ask another question? I love this show tonight.
Sure.
Drifting through that second round availability and the number of picks that the Bills still have remaining, right? We've all agreed. I think everybody agrees. You don't want to come away from this draft with trying to sign 10 guys or practice squatting 3 and what have you. So are you going to try and load up? There's still a lot of defensive tackle talent in round 2. Where do you go? Do you trade up, try to get more into 2, distribute it over 3? And are you still looking at DT, or is there another position or player that pops out in your head, Jerry?
I think that there's a ton of defensive line talent that's still available inside and outside. So I think if you listen to Brandon Beane's press conference the other day, he kind of gave that indicator when he was asked about what the strength of the draft is this year, and he said it's defensive line, it's interior and it's also outside. There's a bunch of guys out there that are available. You look at Jackson from Arkansas. He's been a popular pick to the Bills. The Bills not only talked to him, I think at the combine, they had him in for a top 30 and had another visit with him. They're very, very well versed. And John, I said this the other day, and I'm gonna tell you again. And talking to Joe Marino about this, it seems that the Bills, where like the Falcons went out and picked the Pierce kid from Tennessee, who reminds everybody of Leonard Floyd, and these longer, lankier defensive ends that are, purely pass rush guys. The Bills are trying to really build around that compression pass rusher outside. They want more power to speed than speed to power, so to speak. They want to compress the pocket, and a guy like Jackson does that. And there's also some other defensive linemen that are available. There's some huge guys. There's some guys that not many people know about. There's a kid at Kent State that's rated very, very highly that very well might be there at 56 tomorrow. So I think the main thing, though, was taken care of. There weren't many polished corners. There was a lot of guys that were interesting prospects, like the Porter kid from Iowa State, who played only 7 games as a starting corner. He was a wideout at one time. Now he's 6'4" and he's physical and he's freakish, but he's just playing the position for the first time. So, and then we talked about him before on one of our shows, the pass rusher from UCLA. He's a guy that you can bring in if you want a more of a pass rush straight guy, things like that. So there's a lot of that stuff available in these later rounds. I think the thing we're going to look at now is, does Bean find somebody to take those 2 4s and give them a third? That'll be the next probably big step in this draft. How does Brandon Bean get himself into the 3rd round, which he's not in there right now?
Right. All good stuff. What do we got? Instant reaction shows for every pick the Buffalo Bills make throughout the whole draft, Jerry, or just through tomorrow?
I say definitely tomorrow, and then what we'll do is we'll watch Saturday, and then our Sunday night show.
Yeah,
we'll do a draft recap of everybody, and that's where we'll dive into the day 3 dudes a little bit. But hey, man, John, I'm telling you, I'm going to send you a picture. You got to set your war room up, man. I mean, there ain't nothing better than what I got going on, man. It's like Harbaugh says, who's got it better than me? Nobody.
Hey, I love it. You guys might be on your own tomorrow. Tons of family in town. My sister's getting married. I don't know where I will be tomorrow when the Bills end up picking, and so I am on a perhaps tomorrow. How's that?
Well, Joe, will you be available, Joe, or I need to do? I'm going by myself if I have to. I love this stuff. This draft is my favorite thing.
Yeah, I should be. So, but I'm going to get us out of here, but I should be. So, yeah, so stick around tomorrow. So a lot of good stuff coming out of Overreaction, including the new broadcast that is effectively connected to this, which is the Overreaction Buffalo Daily, that drops every single day, just the news in, on, and around the Buffalo Bills. But thanks so much for joining us for this breaking news, instant reaction, quick podcast, as the Buffalo Bills have selected Mx Hairston from Kentucky, cornerback from Kentucky, at number 30. But for me, for John, for Jerry, for all of us here at Overreaction, we love you guys. Appreciate you. Go Bills.
If you're upset, Bills Mafia, have a drink, take a deep breath, and remember, go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.
Go Bills.